Good morning, Shamstars. Welcome to class. Hope you all are fine. Today we will continue with our chapter Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. We start with the February Revolution. In February 1917, there were food shortages in Russia. While the working class was disgruntled because of the shortages of food supplies, the parliamentarians opposed the decision of the Tsar to dissolve the Duma. On 22nd February, there was a lockout at a factory by the workers. More workers from other factories joined them. Many women led the strikes in factories. In many factories, women led the way to strikes. This came to be called the International Women's Day. This came to be known as International Women's Day. Curfew was imposed by the government. In next few days, more people joined the revolution. Politicians, workers and middle class people began demonstration demanding less working hours, more wages and democracy. They were later joined by the soldiers also. Workers formed a Soviet which later came to be known as the Petrograd Soviet. The Tsar abdicated the throne and a new provincial government was formed by the Soviet leaders. The Petrograd Revolution finally brought an end to the Russian monarchy in February 1917. Now the effect of these are restrictions on public meetings and associations were removed. Soviet was set up everywhere. This is one of the image of Petrograd Soviet meeting. Now we talk about October Revolution. In April 1917, Lenin returned to Russia. He had earlier demanded that the war should be brought to an end. Land should be distributed among the peasants and banks should be nationalized. This came to be known as Lenin April Thesis. During this time in Russia, the committees of workers were formed to look into the working of the industries. Similarly, peasants under the socialist leaders formed their own groups and land committees were formed to handle the distribution of lands to peasants. Most
While
of the
February
industries
Revolution
and banks
led to
were
the end
nationalized
to monarchy
by
in
1917.
Russia, October Revolution
cities,
led to an
large
end of
houses were
provincial
divided
government.
into several quarters
Russia was
according to
declared
the size
as a
of
socialist
the family.
country after the
Later, the
October
Bolsheviks conducted
Revolution.
elections to the
There are some
Constituent
changes
Assembly,
also
but they failed
in
to
Russia
gain
after the
majority
October
votes.
Revolution. First,
Lenin
that Bolshevik
dismissed the
party was
assembly.
renamed as the Russian
Bolshevik
Communist
became the only
Party.
party in
After
Russia
the Bolshevik
which could contest the
held
election.
power in Russia,
Thus,
land was
Russia
declared
became
as
a
a
one-party
social
state.
property and peasants
Police
were allowed
sentenced
to capture
and
the land
punished those
of the
people
nobility.
who criticized the Bolsheviks. While on one hand many people supported the Bolshevik as they stood for the socialism, on the other hand people were also not happy with the party because of the censorship imposed by them. The Bolshevik uprising was criticized by socialists, liberalists, and nobility. The leaders of these groups moved to South Russia and organized troops to fight against Bolsheviks. They were supported by France, Britain, Japan, and America, as these countries were worried over growth of socialism in Russia. As a result, a civil war began in Russia. By January 1920, the Bolsheviks controlled most of the former Russian Empire. They succeeded due to the cooperation with non-Russian nationalists and Muslims. The schooling system supported by the state
developed, and peasants and workers were encouraged to enroll into the universities. Cheap public health care was provided to the workers. Many housing quarters were also set up for the workers. Since the government's resources were limited, the effects of these measures were uneven. Now we talk about Stalin and collectivization. Russia was facing a crisis of shortage of food grains. The peasants refused to sell grain at the prices fixed by the government, resulting in the shortage of grain supplies in many cities. Stalin took over the reign of the party after the death of Lenin. He introduced strict measures. In 1928, the party members visited many villages and raised rich peasants known as kulaks. The party converted small land holdings of many peasants into one collective large farm. All large collectivized farms were cultivated by the farmers with the help of tools pulled together. The profits of the farm were shared among the cultivators. Many peasants resisted the policy of collectivization. They were severely punished by the state. Many of them were deported. Stalin allowed only some independent cultivation. Now, if we think according to Stalin, many party leaders who criticized the policy of collectivization were punished and executed. Stalin put many of his critics into labor camps and prisons. Many professionals were also executed by Stalin under the pretext of opposing the government. Many innocent people were also executed. Now, the Russian Revolution and the world. Many people across the globe criticized the capture of power in Russia by the Bolsheviks. However, many workers and peasants in other parts of the world supported the Russian Revolution. Many non-Russians from outside the USSR participated in the Conference of the People of the East and the Bolshevik founded committee. By the time of the outbreak of the Second World War, the USSR had given socialism a global face and world stature. By 1950, it was realized that the Russian government was not working according to the principles of socialism. Although Russia had become an industrial power and agricultural activities improved, it was contended that basic freedom of the people, such as right to speech, were denied, and that development was a result of repressive policies of the Russian government. India was also impacted by the Russian Revolution. Several people in India attended the communist universities. The Communist Party was formed in India by mid-1920s. Jawaharlal Nehru and Tagore wrote about the Soviet socialism. Several prominent Indian political and social leaders visited Russia to understand the principle of socialism. Various writers wrote about the Russian Revolution. In Hindi, R.S. Avasthi wrote in 1920 and 21 Russian Revolution, Lenin, his life and his thought, and later the Red Revolution. S.T. Vidyankar wrote The Rebirth of Russia and the Soviet State of Russia. There was much that was written in Bengali, Marathi, Malayalam, Tamil, and Telugu. By 1950, it was recognized in the country and outside that everything was not in keeping with the ideals of the Russian Revolution. Thank you, Shemstars. That's all for today. You can drop your queries on the Google Classroom. Take care.